Greetings, Dr. Wolfula here to present a very important special audio presentation that your ears cannot dare unlisten to. Does that make sense? Oh, it doesn't matter. Listen to this.
The podcast which you're about to listen to is an account of the tragedy that befell a duo of podcasters, in particular Randy and his faithful co-host Tomko. It is all the more tragic that they are old and spent hours of their few remaining years watching these films. The events of this podcast led to one of the most bizarre reviews in the annals of American horror history. Ladies and gentlemen, someone's favorite movie takes on the entire Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. Welcome to someone's favorite movie. I'm coming to you from the Pod Shack outside beautiful Bay City, Michigan. My name is Randy, and with me is the man who isn't even comfortable in his own skin, so he decides to wear someone else's.
Well, what else am I supposed to wear when I'm doing my little kooky dance in the moonlight?
You got to do a kooky dance, especially, I tell you what, I actually had a chainsaw in my hand last weekend. I was cutting up some small trees, and you bet your britches I was doing a chainsaw Lambada all over the place.
You had me until you said chainsaw Lambada, and I've got that image in my head.
You're welcome. That's what I try to do. Put images in people's heads. This is someone's favorite movie. Thank you so much for listening. And this is all because of the listeners. They voted on the franchise they wanted us to cover, and it is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. How about that? Wow.
How about that?
How about it? Did you even know there was so many movies in this dumb franchise? Did you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say about this as a whole. Do we want to go over each individual movie, sir, or do we want to talk about what we've been watching?
I think we'll go over each individual one.
So let's go ahead and talk about that first Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. I'm going to come right out and say it's a stone cold classic movie. It's highly influential. And to me, even though it's 40 odd years old now at this point, it's still really effective.
Oh, 100% it is. It's probably my favorite horror movie of all time. The first time I saw it was actually in 2003. They had just come out with a special edition of Texas Chainsaw on DVD, and I bought it because I knew I had heard of it, but wasn't quite sure. And I watched it, and I was so disturbed. I'm like, this is amazing.
Now, I still remember the first time I watched it because I'm sure I've mentioned this on the show, but I grew up with a father who didn't give a rat's ass what I watched.
Right.
He had no problem with me. He took me to go see Full Metal Jacket and RoboCop at the movie theaters when I was like 10, if that tells you anything.
Which is amazing.
He had no problem with me watching Eddie Murphy or Andrew Dice Clay. The one time he did not let me get a movie at the video store was Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And to this day, I still don't know why.
Huh. That's very interesting.
Yeah. So I went over to a friend's house. He had it. We watched it, and it lived up to everything I was hoping it would.
I mean, it's right there at the beginning of the birth of slashers. If it's not the first, the first major one. Black Christmas was that year as well. Critic Lou Byton called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre the Gone with the Wind of meat movies when it came out, which is fun. Also,
high praise indeed.
Yeah. Also, it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There's a space between chain and saw.
Almost like a slice right down the middle.
Yeah. So don't you dare spell it wrong. You can spell it the Texas Chainsaw Massacre when we get to the sequel, but not the first one. Chain and saw are separated. God damn it, you better separate it. It's like the hyphen between spider and man. It better be there.
I don't want to say that this is a perfect movie because it's not. The characters are pretty much meaningless except for Sally and Franklin.
Exactly.
And even then, that's on a technicality. But it's still pretty amazing just with what they had to work with as far as budget, with the limitations of the technology they had. And it's still, I mean, even from just a cinematography point of view and from a film quality point of view, it looks like an amazingly shot movie.
I did watch this with my girlfriend Pookie, whom I adore, and she had never seen a Texas Chainsaw Massacre. She watched the remake from 2003 with me, which she had thoughts about. So then she was curious and wanted to watch the original. So we watched that the other day. And the thing that she said about this is when it comes to the characters, she thought it was really interesting that one of the main characters was in a wheelchair because you don't really see that much then or even now. And she thought that was really something because he's played as a whiny, obnoxious, almost unlikable person.
An asshole.
Yeah. However, he's treated as one of the friends, and like it's not really. I mean, there's some instances where his wheelchair is a hindrance to him, but for the most part, he's just one of the folks out there having fun, you know?
Yeah, I've never really even thought about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I suppose it was kind of ahead of its time in that way.
When you think about it, there's not a lot of people in wheelchairs in any movie that you see other than an X-Men movie, I guess.
And technically, this movie has two of them.
Technically, it
you
does.
got the grandpa.
Yeah, you do have grandpa. So this movie, like the beginning, right from the beginning, you're in for a treat because it's got that ominous voiceover from John Larroquette, and it makes it feel like it's ripped straight from the headlines.
I remember there were people in my high school who still swore that it was based on a true story.
Yeah, I mean, it's and my girlfriend thought it was based on a true story as well. It's the whole Blair Witch effect. Like
I think it also had to do with the fact that it was shot in a manner where it felt like the people on the screen were reacting as opposed to acting. You know, it felt very real. Now, the other thing that I think about with this movie is just the little details that they always put into it, whether it's the set decoration where you have these ornate sculptures that are made out of bones and carcasses, or just like the weird close-up on sausages that are roasting over a fire, the weird hand movements that Leatherface is making right before the dinner scene. It's just these little details that all add up, and I don't know why, but it's the little things in this movie that really, no pun intended, get under my skin.
Yeah, that's the other thing she said, that it was super disturbing because of all the details and how Leatherface in this movie was so matter-of-fact about the way he kills people.
I don't know if I would say he was matter-of-fact. I would say that he was scared shitless.
Well, at the one scene, he's kind of beside himself because he doesn't know what's going on. But also in the heat of the moment, he just bashes them over the head with a sledgehammer like he's slaughtering animals. That's my observation, that it's kind of a half-assed commentary on ethical treatment of animals. And
I was going to say, I've heard this movie described as the most pro-vegetarian movie until Babe came along.
I like that. Because there's this whole, they pass the slaughterhouse in the beginning of the movie and remark about the stench of it, and one of the girls says that people shouldn't kill animals for food, and then they show this really pathetic cow just looking miserable as can be. And even when they pick up the hitchhiker, The hitchhiker, even though he's insane, says that the new ways of slaughtering cattle are no good and the old ways were a lot better. Which is
Yeah, but I don't
interesting.
know if I could really agree with his reasoning.
Well, he's a brilliant man, you see. He's an entrepreneur. He's out there taking photographs of scared folks and trying to sell them to those folks.
I kind of wonder if this movie was single-handedly responsible for the decline in hitchhikers in the U.S.
It's got to be, right? This movie has to be the whole reason nobody picks up hitchhikers.
I know I never will.
You don't have to tell me twice. I don't even like people. I saw this and I'm like, well, this is why. This is why. The beginning.
Thank you, Toby Hooper, for this confirmation of my lifestyle decisions.
Absolutely. The beginning of this movie really sets the tone for me because it's just this photograph of the sun and it's overlaid with red and there's just this sinister tone in the background and you hear all this a voiceover of a newscaster like painting this hellish landscape of like a wildfire and outbreak of violence in the Houston area and random suicides and collapsing buildings. It really sets the tone. It's like these people are stuck in hell right now.
That and the sound effects, where you have the grunting and the scraping and the slicing of the corpses that they're digging up, and ugh.
Yuck indeed. Yeah. We also see in the beginning moments of the film Texas Chainsaw Landmark #1, a dead aardvark in the middle of the road. I swear to God, if you see a dead aardvark in the middle of the road, right on its fucking back, you best turn around.
Yeah. I thought you were going to talk about the fact that I guess you heard the story about how that came into the movie, right?
I read something, but I forgot completely.
Toby Hooper originally wanted to use a dog and then decided that no, that's going to push the audience too far away. And then they decided that they were going to use a horse. And then they decided that they can't do that because A, it's too big, and B, the stench was too much. And, coincidentally enough, they already had the horse before they decided that. And then the set decorator was out on the road, and then he saw this roadkill armadillo, and he spent all weekend meticulously taxidermying it to the condition that you saw on screen. And I guess there was a huge argument because Toby Hooper wanted to open the movie with the green van just running it over and destroying it on the road. And the guy was pissed because he spent all weekend on it. And honestly, I think from the movie's point of view, I think it was the right decision that they ended up with.
Yeah, that would have been an interesting beginning, though. Like, it would have painted them as a more reckless, uncaring group.
Mm-hmm.
And like they get what they have coming because look at them, these stupid kids. In an article for Esquire magazine, Toby Hooper said of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre that, quote, "I was reacting to life around me as I knew it. The film was, to me, a part of what I felt like we were moving into in the future. An example of that is in the van. The news is on the radio a couple of times, and the news has these horrible stories on it about things like an office building in Atlanta collapsing. These things really weren't happening in the 70s, but now they are, and 3 or 4 times a day.
Yeah.
So it was a reflection of my feelings about the political environment, especially here in Austin. It was coming from a part of my reality."
Yeah, I mean, I guess there are all sorts of ways to read this movie. I've heard it described as anti-meat. I've heard it described as against the Vietnam War, anti-capitalist. I don't see a lot of those comparisons except for the meat one, but maybe that's just because I didn't live through those times.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, to me, it's just a straight up great horror movie.
Yeah.
No subtext really needed.
I tend to believe that too. I can see the meat thing more than anything, but yeah, for the most part, I don't see some vast commentary about Yeah, I just don't see it. I mean, Toby Hooper can tell me all day long what he meant in his movie, and I'll believe it. But personally, I didn't get anything like that out of it. It didn't change my mind or sway my opinion on anything. So
I mean, maybe they kind of hinted at the fact that the hitchhiker was a Vietnam vet, but that's all I'm really seeing.
sure, yeah, maybe a little PTSD or something like that. Who knows?
Hmm.
In this movie, we have a lot of early slasher tropes that would be homaged or outright stolen in future movies. We have the old babbling drunk warning the kids as they visit their grandfather's grave that odd things happen around these parts.
I see
Yeah.
things.
Number 2, they stop at a gas station where the cranky old man, aka the cook running the joint, says they have no gas there, and he warns them not to mess around old places or mess around on someone else's property, because some folks don't take kindly to such things. I mean, whenever you get a warning like that, just turn around the other way.
Yeah, or maybe just have another pop.
Have another
You know?
soda.
Exactly. They got some good barbecue. Just kick back and enjoy the air conditioning.
Who cares if the barbecue was some man named Bruce that they found hitchhiking? You don't know
Slather
that.
some sauce on it. It's all the same.
You don't. Yeah, exactly. Bruce tastes like chicken.
Now, speaking of that gas station, you do know what that is now, don't you?
No.
It's a museum dedicated to the Texas Chainsaw franchise, and behind it they have individual cabins where you can camp out and stay the night.
Oh, that's amazing.
It has been a pipe dream for me to rent a cabin down there one of these days.
I did hear that the original Texas Chainsaw house where the family lives was like uprooted and
A bed and breakfast.
Yeah. That's
And from what I understand, not only is the food there really good, I guess, but they are very accommodating to fans of the movie.
I should hope so.
Well, yeah, because what else are they going to be known for other than the fact that if it weren't for the building that they were in, nobody would give a rat's ass about it.
Exactly.
You should, I mean, at least not on an international level.
Yeah. Texas Chainsaw Trivia, Timco. Where does the original movie and the remake take place in Texas? What town?
I thought it was Austin.
Ooh. Nope, it has a name. It's only said once in the
Oh,
original.
no.
The town of Newt, Texas.
Never trust anything named Newt.
Yeah, don't do it. If you're unaware of what this movie is about, it's about a group of teens who are road tripping to a small town in Texas where they're going to visit their grandfather's grave, and two siblings, Sally and Franklin Hardesty, are showing their friends the old place their grandparents used to own where they spent a good chunk of their childhood, it sounds like. They're running low on gas. So two of the frolicking teens, after they stop at the gas station and are told that there's no gas there, two of the teens go to this house where they hear these generators to see if they can buy some gas off these kind folk. And despite any common sense, they walk directly into somebody's house. And
yeah, I was gonna say, is that like a 1970s thing? Because you don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, they knocked on the door like twice, and then was like, "Oh, what the hell? I'll just walk the fuck in." No, that's not what happens. You're trespassing.
I mean, A, it's bad manners. B, you have the good chance of getting your ass shot off or head bashed in.
Yeah. Immediately, one of the guys, Kurt, who walks into the house, hears these pig noises, walks towards this red room in the back that he sees.
Another creepy detail of those pig noises.
Yeah, he walks towards it, saying hello, hello. And as he approaches the red room, a giant man with a leather face appears out of nowhere and bashes him over the head. And that disturbs the fuck out of me to this day.
Do you know how they got the reaction out of the actor that was killed in that scene, they did not let anybody see Gunnar Hansen in his full costume until he was on set with them. And so the first time that character saw it in the movie, that's the first time the actor saw it, and it scared the shit out of him.
Oh, that's great.
And I guess they had to get a couple takes and edit them together because he saw Gunnar Hansen in the full Leatherface outfit, screamed like a baby, and turned tail and ran out of the house.
I was gonna say Marilyn Burns, who played Sally Hardesty, Hardesty was the first Scream Queen, but maybe it was that dude, right?
Maybe.
I love that. The detail that really gets me every time is after he bashes Kurt over the head with the sledgehammer.
The legs.
Yes, the seizure.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah.
They homage it to in Texas Chainsaw 2 a little bit, but it's not the same impact. No pun intended.
No. And then you have I can never remember the names of the characters except for Franklin and Sally, but you have Kirk's girlfriend who just thinks she hears something and decides, you know what, maybe I should go in and take a look and make sure that he's okay. And then they've got that amazing dolly shot where it starts from underneath the porch swing or the swinging, the bench swing, and just follows her until all you can see in this house is this tiny little woman in this huge looming house. And then, dummy that she is, she walks into that house, and next thing you know, she's being chased by this like 8-foot, 500-pound man who is just grabbing her without any struggle at all and manhandling her, and then just casually hangs her on a meat hook.
Yeah. What I like about this movie a lot is it's not very gory at all.
No, there's very little blood in it.
And a lot of the horror is just implied. Like you see Leatherface holding this small girl, you see the meat hook, and then you see the after effect of her screaming on the meat hook. But you don't see the hook enter her back or anything like that. And really, you don't need to.
But there are people who will swear that they saw it go in the back and out the breastbone.
Right. Yeah, no. By all accounts, this was a really guerrilla sort of indie film. Like, they didn't really have much of a budget.
No, this was a brutal movie to make. I guess the reason why you see that actress screaming that way and grabbing the hook isn't because she's a good actress. It's because they basically strung her up by strings around her waist, and all of her body weight is going on that rope, and she's in genuine pain.
Yeah. Marilyn Burns, who played Sally, said about the movie, they got their realism. I think that was one way around having to save a lot of money. You just went for it. Little reality never hurts a picture. Could have hurt me quite a lot, though. There was a week they spent on my eyes where we came in and they took pictures of my eyes and they say, just be still, Marilyn, tear up. Well, it's real hard to get your eyes to just do just exactly what the director wants them to do. People used to say, wow, it looks so real. It's got such a quality. We'd say we shot it in 16 millimeter to give it that grainy documentary look. And people would say, wow, that's such a good idea. Well, we couldn't afford anything else. We shot it like that because it was cheap. There's a lot of points in this movie where one of the most iconic scenes in the movie, and the one that disturbs me the most, is the dinner party scene, which is also a Texas Chainsaw landmark. The dinner party scene. And it's so fucking disturbing.
Because of the screaming, and B, it just goes on. And it doesn't go on in like the way where it's like, okay, this is just too long. It just feels like a violation on many fronts.
Yeah, it just builds the tension more and more. And she's screaming louder and louder. And Leatherface and the hitchhiker are imitating her. And the cook is laughing and giggling at her. And it's just fucking brutal. And it feels so realistic because apparently they filmed that scene for like 24 hours straight, and she was straight up losing her mind. And the
From what I understand, they all were.
yes, there were scenes where Gunnar Hansen, who played Leatherface, was on pot brownies, wielding a chainsaw and tearing through doors. They were locked in this hot, steaming room in the middle of Texas, and all their little props of like chicken and whatnot were real, and they were decomposing right in front of their faces. And Gunnar Hansen stunk so bad because they only had one costume for him because that's all they could afford, really. So everybody was slowly going insane. At one point, when Sally escapes and runs to the gas station for what she thinks is safety, and instead she finds out that the man who runs the gas station is part of the Leatherface clan. Apparently in that scene where he's hitting her with the broomstick or whatever, he actually hit her with the broomstick.
Mm-hmm.
And at certain points, she started to feel a little unsafe because the men in the movie were taking it a little too seriously.
Well, you remember when they cut her finger so that Grandpa could suckle the blood?
Another disturbing part of that dinner party scene, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and his arm gestures were... But I guess they tried several ways and several times to do it where it looked convincing, and they just could not get it. And so finally, and I don't believe they let her know, they just flat out cut her finger.
Yeah. Yep.
And I guess that they had to film that entire scene in one day because they were getting ready to lose Jim Sydow, the actor that played the cook, and the actor that played the grandfather. So they had to shoot everything in a 24-hour period. And it's 100 degrees outside. They're closed in this unventilated room that is filled with rotting meat. The temperature is rising even higher than 100 because of the lights needed to get exposure for the film. And at one point, Gunnar Hansen was talking about how he hears the hitchhiker say, hit her, just give me the hammer, let me hit her. And he's thinking to himself, yeah, let's just hit her and get this over with.
Right. Yeah. And that was a real sledgehammer too. It wasn't some prop.
Yeah.
So yeah. Apparently that scene where she she doesn't know how to use the door, this Sally. She likes to crash through windows. So apparently the second time they used the stunt double to crash through the window. Okay. But then they had Marilyn Burns, who played Sally, climb up to a very tall part of the house and jump off so they could film the actual landing and her landing. So that's why you see, that's why you see when in that scene, if you know what you're looking for, when she actually gets up and starts to run, she is actually limping, and that is real. And I read that in the
poor woman
oral history of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Companion. So good stuff. And Grandpa, by the way, was some 18-year-old kid.
Yes. And the prosthetics, I guess, were made by a local plastic surgeon, where he took like casts of the guy's face, and he used his knowledge of the human anatomy to try to figure out what this 18-year-old kid would look like if he was 120. And they only had the one set of prosthetics, so they had to shoot everything in that one night. I mean, this is one of those movies where the behind-the-scenes stories are almost, if not on par, with the actual movie.
Yeah, to me, it just adds to it. It just adds to the mythology and mystique of the movie.
Now, do you know the reason why there isn't a lot of gore in this movie? And I don't believe there's any actually, like, cursing.
Well, there was rumors that that Toby Hooper wanted it to be a PG movie
That's not a rumor. He kept calling the MPAA, wanting to know what the guidelines were in order to have a horror movie
on TV.
rated.
He wanted to get it
Exactly.
on TV. I know that.
Exact. That, and he wanted to have a wide distribution because, he'd made a bunch of college movies and indie movies. He wanted to have a smash hit on his hands, and so he wanted it to be seen by as many people as possible.
Yeah. And in the meantime, he made the most disturbing AF movie he possibly could.
Well, I mean, it's not gory. There's no nudity.
No, it's not, but it'll traumatize a small child. This movie is like, one of the best things about it is it goes very quickly.
Yes.
I mean,
it hits the ground running.
Yeah, right off the bat, we get a little character work and whatever. But then right off the bat, Leatherface kills like 3 out of the 5 kids. So we're right in it. It all leads to the final and maybe the most important slasher movie trope to come from this, and that's the final girl, Tomko.
Yes, it does.
At the end of the movie, Sally escapes. The hitchhiker chases her. He gets mowed down by a semi-truck. Leatherface still tries to get her. The driver bounces a wrench off Leatherface's head, and the chainsaw lands on his leg, which cuts it. And
do you know how they did that effect? The chainsaw to Leatherface's leg. Do you know how they did that? They had a steel plate underneath Gunnar Hansen's pant leg.
Oh yeah,
and then like a cheap steak on top of that, and then ran an actual chainsaw with an actual blade on his leg. And I guess he got like several second-degree burns just from the friction.
Yeah, I did read that.
The other big thing that I've always wanted to know about this movie: what happened to the truck driver?
I know, he just kind of vanishes. He's just like,
yeah, he's there to run over the hitchhiker, bash Leatherface in the face with a wrench, and then he runs the fuck away. But what happened to that dude?
I mean, yeah.
Where's his sequel?
He needs one. He really does.
Does.
Meanwhile, another truck pulls up and Sally gets in it. And it's ironic because Sally becomes the hitchhiker. And with blood on her face, and she might possibly be insane by the end of the movie. And
you think?
And as it drives away into the sunset, Leatherface does the dance of the chainsaw in frustration, which is another Texas Chainsaw trope, which I love. It's ridiculous, and somehow it worked.
It just shows his frustration that, damn it, she got away. That's not supposed to happen.
Yeah. The other thing about this movie is, which makes it kind of cutting edge for the time, I think, is the androgyny of Leatherface, which will come back. It will.
Yes.
It's
he has different faces for different needs.
Yeah. So at one point he's wearing a old woman. When we first meet him, he's wearing a butcher's face or a man's face. Then at one point he's wearing an old woman's face, and he's like dressed up in this shawl and sweater. And then at the dinner party, it's like, this is my coming, we're having guests for dinner face. And he's got makeup and lipstick on. And that'll all pay off in future sequels, whether we want it to or not.
Yes, because subtext is for pussies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I mean, I don't know what else to say about this movie other than the fact that it got so many things right that the sequels just couldn't wrap their head around. And we'll get there, folks. But all of the other movies, I think, were lacking in that. Really, I mean, Leatherface isn't the aggressor. The rest of the family is the aggressor. He was kind of conditioned to do this. And again, when he has those first 2 or 3 kills, he is terrified because he has all these people that are coming into his house doing God knows what, and he doesn't know if there's going to be more of them. He doesn't know what they want, but he just knows that he's scared. And I'm not saying that he's a sympathetic character by any stretch of the imagination, but to me, that's the more interesting version of the character, as opposed to just the typical slasher.
That's what makes Leatherface unique amongst the slasher cads. He's got that entire family. Like, without them, he's just, for lack of a better term, simple. But he's kind of their blunt instrument. They point where he should go, and he does it.
That, and at least in this first movie, where are the women?
They
in this family
nowhere to be found. They're just.
And I also find it interesting that the cook, who is sadistic in that he does enjoy torturing people, he just can't find it in himself to kill people.
Yeah, he says, "I take no pleasure in killing."
Just never had a taste for it.
Which really pisses me off when you watch a later installment in this franchise, and you're like, "That's not that character at all." Didn't you get it?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I think you and I might be on the same page on that one, sir.
Oh, I can't wait to talk about that one. Toby Hooper said the old EC comics, which were for old school comic fans, they were in the 50s. It's where Tales from the Crypt came from. They really specialized in horror. He said the old EC comics were collections of short horror stories. They were absolutely frightening, unbelievably gruesome, and they were packed with the most unspeakably horrible monsters and fiends. I started reading these comics when I was about 7, and I loved them. They were not in any way based on logic. To enjoy them, you had to accept there is a boogeyman out there. Since I started reading these comics when I was young and impressionable, their overall feeling stayed with me. I'd say they were the single most important influence on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. A lot of their mood went into the film, along with some of Hitchcock's methods of manipulating an audience.
I could totally see that, yeah.
Same.
Now that that's laid out in front of me, yeah, that's absolutely true.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre trivia. Number 2, Tomko, what was Texas Chainsaw originally going to be called?
Either Leatherface or Head Cheese.
Right. Yeah. I mean, thank God it wasn't called Head Cheese.
Thank God.
Yeah.
I had a grandfather that loved that shit.
Ugh.
Ugh, is right.
I've never had it, but just the thought of it makes me.
I've seen it, and that's enough for me to just can't do it.
Chainsaw opened on October 11, 1974 in the US of A. It was distributed by Bryanston Pictures, which was a new company formed by members of the Pirano family, with Louis Butchie Pirano as president.
Sounds like a trustworthy fellow.
It was financed by profits from the groundbreaking Deep Throat. Yes.
And I guess to this day, nobody knows how much money the movie actually made.
No, it did well, they think, but they're not sure. So basically, the cast and crew got hosed because a mafia family controlled it.
Mm-hmm.
Much the same way the cast and crew of Deep Throat got hosed because, by all accounts, that was like a raging success. And nobody received any sort of life-changing money from that.
And I'm wondering how they managed to get all of these different home video releases. Like, did Bryanstown go out of business where they, shut down by the government? How did the rights end up going to these different distributors? I wonder.
Oh, that's a good question. That I don't know. I recently bought a new Blu-ray steelbook of the original. So that's a good. I should look on the back and see what it says.
I'm tempted to buy the big 40th anniversary box set. It's called the Black Maria edition. It's in the box is in the shape of the cattle car that runs over the hitchhiker.
Are you shitting me? Where is this?
I don't know. I'll have to send you a picture of it. But It comes with an extra disc. It comes with a poster, and it comes with an apron.
Oh man, I would love that. I was looking for box sets online and I couldn't find any, so this is blowing my mind right now. In 1983, for some reason, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre video game was released for the Atari 2600.
I've played that
Did
before.
you really?
It's awful.
Yes.
Yes, I have it on a Retro Pi. It's awful.
That's amazing that you've played it. In the game, I mean, I guess you can speak to this because you have experience. You control Leatherface, and your mission is to kill all the people while also fueling up your chainsaw. And if the chainsaw runs out of gas, you lose a life.
You know what? It's an interesting way to kill 5 minutes. That's the best I can say about that game.
Yeah. The game was the subject of some controversy because violence, because you can see a lot from all those sprites, those pink sprites and red sprites.
Well, you are playing as the actual killer, so I can see it.
The announced video game was advertised to be released in Christmas 1982 by Wizard Video Games alongside Flesh Gordon. Yes, that's right, Flesh Gordon, billed as the world's first adult video game.
I haven't played that one, but I have played Custer's Last Stand, which is possibly the single most offensive video game of all time.
I have heard of that. Yeah. Can you explain
Yes.
what that is to all the people?
Well, first of all, I'm going to apologize.
Sure.
But basically, you play as George S. Custer, who has to duck and weave his way around a hailstorm of arrows to get to the young Indian lass on the other side of the screen and make whoopee.
You got to make that whoopee.
I'm trying to not to sound like a skis any more than I possibly have to.
I don't know, Tomko. I think only skeezes say making whoopee, so you failed.
Hey, you know what? If Frank Sinatra... Okay, bad example.
Oh, damn it. Not only did the video game come out in 12 years between the two Texas Chainsaw movies, but also a movie called Motel Hell came out, which came out in 1980. And it owes a little bit to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and in turn, I think the second Texas Chainsaw owes a little to Motel Hell. Have you seen Motel Hell?
I never have. We've talked about reviewing this, haven't we?
Probably. I believe so. I'm willing to do it because I think it's interesting. I watched it just for, because this. You see, I wanted to be very thorough in my research, and my God, it's about a couple of quirky cannibals that are keeping their crops out in the garden out back. They bury them up to their heads and cut out their voice boxes so they kind of moan and groan like zombies. There's a chainsaw duel at the end. So that's something. The main bad guy who participates in the chainsaw duel is wearing a giant pig head. So that's a thing too. Yeah. But I think
that is interesting for a later installment, actually.
I think so. But I think the thing that Motel Hell gets right is the black humor, the black comedy, the dark comedy in it. And I think that's what Texas Chainsaw Massacre II is all about. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes. It took me a couple times to watch this movie to really kind of get what they were going for. And once I realized that it was all a big joke, I could just have a whole hell of a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I like this one quite a bit too. I think it's my favorite 1-2 punch out of all the horror movies.
Possibly, yeah.
It's my favorite. Texas Chainsaw Massacre II was a final film in Tobe Hooper's 3-picture deal with the infamous Cannon Films. The other films being Life Force and Invaders from Mars, which are both cult classics in their own right, I suppose. When this movie was coming out, Hooper gave an interview with the LA Times and said, with the first film, I think audiences were so shocked that it took them 5 years or so before they saw and appreciated its humor. Okay,
And there is a little bit of humor in that movie.
a little bit.
Not much, but it's there.
A little bit, but not to the extent that it's present in this one. Like, tonally, they're completely different. The family group shot that was seen in advertisements and posters and whatnot was using the same positioning as the group shot for the movie The Breakfast Club. So, if you think they were being serious with this,
And I think that's what killed this movie, honestly, is the fact that people were expecting a serious movie, and it's anything but.
It's not. There's a lot of things I like about this movie, though. What do you think? What's your overall thoughts on it?
If I had to give it a letter grade, I'd give it maybe a B minus. I think the first 2/3 of the movie are just a fun ride where you have Tom Savini at his height. You've got Bill Moseley basically making himself a cult star with the character of Chop Top. You have Jim Seido. I'm pretty sure he's the only one that actually returned in front of the camera, just hamming it up. You've got Dennis Hopper playing the role of cocaine on two legs. It's just a fun movie. But once they get to the very end with the dinner scene, that's where I think the wheels kind of come off a little bit, because it just feels like you're treading ground that's already been walked on.
Yeah, that
you have the same thing with the old grandpa. You have the lady tied up at the head of the table, screaming her head off. It just felt like it was been there, done that.
You even have the repeat of Grandpa trying to bash her head in with the hammer and not being able to hold on to the hammer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and to me, that's what stops this movie from kind of going up several notches.
I agree. It's a very fun ride. So Chop Top is so memorable. Bill Moseley said that he saw Texas Chainsaw in 1974, and he was so inspired by this, he made something called the Texas Chainsaw Manicure. He actually wrote and directed a 5-minute scenario of a woman going to a beauty parlor for a manicure, and the door opens up to the back, and Leatherface comes out and gives a manicure with a chainsaw. Moseley said, I went back to New York City, raised about $1,000, went out to Staten Island, took over a beauty parlor, and shot the Texas Chainsaw Manicure, and gave myself a cameo as the hitchhiker. My wife gets the manicure, comes out and shows me, and turns out to be a beautiful manicure. I had the Ed Neal outfit and the birthmark on my face, and I go, hey, that's great, honey. We should celebrate with some head cheese. I'd bought a lump of real head cheese, which was a mistake. And I held it up in front of my face, and in one take, I actually licked it, which was not a good idea. He said, but it seemed like everywhere I tried to sell this thing, there was a reason they wouldn't buy it. So falling into despair, I figured, well, that's the end of that. I was working for Omni Magazine, and they sent me out to L.A. to cover the making of 2010. I took along a copy. I showed it to a screenwriter friend I was staying with. He thought it was hilarious. He took it to Toby Hooper and got me Toby's home number. So when I went back to New York, called Toby about a week later and told him I made the short film, he said, yeah, I love Manicure. Now, who was the guy who played the hitchhiker? And that's how he was cast.
The stars aligned for a young Bill Moseley.
I mean, they got to align for somebody. They've never aligned for me, but maybe one day I'll be in a Texas Chainsaw movie.
And let's face it, I mean, he kind of steals this entire movie somehow.
Yeah, he really does.
I mean, it's a great character design visually. You've got him starting out with just this ridiculous Sonny Bono wig, wearing something that looks like it was stolen from a Goodwill store. Then all of a sudden he gets hit in the head with a chainsaw, and it's revealed that he has this steel plate that he keeps itching and picking at the skin around it and eating it, which is ugh. And he is a lot of the source of what I think is some very welcome humor in this movie.
That and Leatherface is a completely different character in this movie.
Yeah. I would almost say that he's a different character in every movie.
That's true. Yeah, maybe the face he's wearing is like some desperate heart, desperate lonely heart that's only looking for the right girl to settle down with. Maybe that's the face he's wearing. Who knows?
And he found it in Stretch.
Oh yes, the lovely Stretch, played by Caroline Williams. This movie is about Stretch, who's the main protagonist, along with Dennis Hopper. She's a DJ at a local small town radio station. Dennis Hopper is playing Lefty Enright, who is the uncle of Sally and Franklin from the first movie. And we do get a Franklin cameo later in this film, which I appreciate.
Yes, I don't know if it's appropriate to chuckle at that, but I couldn't help it.
He is so obsessed with figuring out and bringing the killers to justice that he's dedicated the last 15 years of his life or whatever to tracking down the Leatherface family and basically handing out his own form of justice in the form of killing them with chainsaws. That's his plan. One night, Stretch gets this call from a couple of stupid yuppies, just obnoxious as all can be, who piss off the wrong people and get one. The driver gets his head chopped off, the top of his head chopped off by Leatherface. So that's a thing. And the whole thing is played on tape, so she has a recording of it, and she takes it to Lefty, who put a news article out in the local newspapers about this. Any information about this, please contact me. Lefty tells her to play the tape on repeat at the station that night to use her as bait, basically. And, of course, Leatherface and Chop Top show up. But, oh boy, Leatherface has such a crush on this Stretch. And
Well, come on, with those cowboy boots, can you blame him?
Can't. It gets downright phallic, too.
Yes. Not since, what was it, Slumber Party Massacre, have there been so many phallic symbols in a movie.
Yeah. He corners her and thrust his chainsaw at her. It's really something. In an interview with Caroline Williams during Texas Chainsaw 2's 30th anniversary, she reflected on playing Stretch. She said, "The original final girl was obviously Marilyn Burns, and I stand on her shoulders. She was my dear, dear friend, and she's missed very much. But she was the first final girl for real. She managed to twist the tail around on Leatherface and the crazy family and escaped in the back of that truck, and she got away. So when it came time for the second one, Toby definitely wanted to have another final girl theme because Laurie Strode broke that year. Ripley and Aliens broke that year. The final girl phenomenon really came full circle in 86, and you have a lot of final girls. It's kind of a cool thing. They aren't just running around in the forest naked and falling down." So at least she enjoyed playing that part.
Oh, yeah, she has absolutely embraced the fandom wholeheartedly. And it's not like, a lot of the people who, well, the example I always think of is Rosanna Arquette, who, let's face it, got her big break in a slasher movie, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. And she's just flat out embarrassed by it. She won't acknowledge it at all. Carolyn Williams, while maybe didn't have the same kind of career as a Rosanna Arquette, at least has fun with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this isn't the end of the Stretch character, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
You missed her cameo in Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw 3?
I saw the actress, but I wasn't sure if that was the same character.
Supposed to be, according to
Okay.
yeah. Apparently, in the audio commentary of Texas Chainsaw 2, she says that in 3, Stretch has taken up Lefty's job of tracking down the family in revenge for their crimes, which is very interesting.
Which to me, I mean, how? Why would she do that? The hitchhiker was dead already. Chopped up, Tapa fell to his death. The cook blew himself up with a grenade, and Leatherface was impaled on a chainsaw.
And also, if that was the case, then like that would have been a much more interesting movie than we got in 3.
Way more interesting.
Yeah, that would have been cool. But that's not what we got. But we'll get there. She also later, in 2013, played a news reporter named Amanda Palmer in Hatchet 3, and the director, B.J. McDonald, told her, quote, "She's Stretch. That's what we're doing here. I played the character of Amanda precisely as Stretch would be. Stretch grew up, changed her name, married a law enforcement guy, and she split because she's a woman who is obsessed with pursuing these legends, these myths, which in her mind are not myths." So there's that. And also, she makes a cameo appearance in Sharknado 4, The Fourth Awakens as Stretch. And,
Oh, good.
and hell yeah, she kills a bunch of swirling sharks with a chainsaw. So there you go.
Now, I guess this movie was a victim of studio interference. Because I guess Tobe Hooper had one thing in mind, and the distributors at Canon had something entirely different. And I guess they made him cut a bunch of stuff out and reshuffle the order of various things. And I would love to have seen even a shooting script to get an idea of what Tobe Hooper had in mind, but I guess everything is lost.
Yeah, that sucks. I mean, on its own, it really, I find it to be really entertaining. I think it's fun.
Oh, yeah.
I think what you said is true. Once the dinner party scene pops up, which is just a Texas Chainsaw stable, it's in every fucking one, pretty much. So, I guess you got to live with it. But it is almost too much exactly like the first. And
I think if you don't take this movie too seriously, crack open a couple of beers and have fun with it, you'll have a good time. But if you're expecting something on the level and mood and atmosphere of the original, you're going to be really frustrated.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely the second best Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. I'm going to say that.
It definitely is.
Yeah, I'm going to say that. I would recommend this a lot.
Then we have the third one.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Primus sampled Chop Top's line, "Dog will hunt," for the song "Jerry Was a Race Car Driver." So that's a factoid for you.
Oh, not only that, but the character of Chop Top does live on in the rock band Cornbugs.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's a project that Bill Moseley has with a guitarist named Buckethead, where basically Buckethead is just thrashing the hell out of his guitar while Bill Moseley is reciting lyrics in the character of Chop Top. It's amazing.
Amazing. That's a strong word.
It is amazing. Just go to YouTube and type in "pigs are people too," and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Yes, do that, please. Everyone do that right now.
Right now. Hit pause on us, come back, and you'll be laughing with Randy.
Yeah, just go ahead. Pigs are people. You know what's funny, though? Bill Moseley
What's that?
Was in a movie that we covered previously in another franchise, Silent Night, Deadly Night 3.
Yes, he
In
was.
which he plays Ricky Caldwell with a metal head, but no charisma.
I don't blame him for that
No
movie.
charisma at all. So, I mean, it's like they saw this movie and they're like, yeah, Bill Moseley. But let's not let him have any personality or over the topness at all. Let's not do that.
Let's just have him stand there with something ridiculous on his head.
Yeah. Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre III.
I remember when this movie came out, and I remember actually getting really excited based on that little teaser trailer, where it was a spoof of like the Arthurian legend with the lady in the lake throwing the sword to King Arthur, except it's a chainsaw being tossed to Leatherface, and I was so excited. And then I caught it on cable, and what a piece of dog shit.
That trailer is fucking amazing and phenomenal.
It is.
You don't bother with Texas Chainsaw 3. Just watch the trailer on repeat. It is great. You got the lady in the lake. You got lightning striking the fucking chainsaw as Leatherface catches
A
it.
very intricately detailed chainsaw, by the way.
Yeah, apparently in that trailer, that was Kane Hodder, too, I read.
Yeah, I remember reading that.
Which is also interesting. Kane Hodder of Friday the 13th fame. I like the idea of there being some sort of god of chainsaws that distributes mighty blades to those worthy foe. I love it. He's probably wearing flannel, has a big beard.
Listening to Jackal.
Yeah, exactly. This movie also has, by the way, a kick-ass theme song for Leatherface called Leatherface.
Of course, what else are you going to call it?
Well, I mean,
Strangers in the Night doesn't work.
Does not work.
And honestly, neither does this movie.
This movie does not matter.
It does not matter. This movie, I think, makes the cardinal sin of all movies in that it doesn't matter if it's bad, but as long as it's not boring. This movie was boring.
This movie tries to turn Texas Chainsaw into just a regular slasher and fails miserably.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I sat through this movie twice within the last year. I can't tell you a single defining characteristic about any of the characters other than you got Leatherface, you have a lady that talks through a voice box, a little girl, and you have something to embarrass Viggo Mortensen with.
Yeah. Viggo Mortensen plays the slick talking sort of Texan gentleman, also called Tex. And that's about it. Once again, Leatherface has an extended family that we've never seen before. There's it's supposed to be its own thing, but there's little nods to the past. Like even in the beginning, it has the typical voiceover and says that 2 minor events occurred before. You have the connective tissue of Stretch appearing in a scene, whether you want to believe that was her or not. Also, you have the Saw is family thing, which was
a line from the second one.
Drayton Sawyer. Yes, they have names. In the second, we learned the cook was Drayton Sawyer. Leatherface is Bubba Sawyer until he's not, and then he's Thomas Hewitt until he's not. Then he's Jedediah Sawyer, and then he's maybe not. Who the fuck cares? But Drayton says to Leatherface, "You have one choice, boy. Sex or the saw. Sex is, well, nobody knows, but the saw is family." And they took that line and emblazoned it on a mighty chainsaw that gets gifted to Leatherface towards the end of the movie.
And let's face it, that inanimate object is the most interesting thing in this movie.
I don't know about that. I kind of like Ken Foree in this movie. I like the idea of like some kick-ass that actually takes the fight to one of these guys.
I like the idea of a weekend warrior who finally gets to go and cut loose, but it's not enough to save this movie.
I like
You
the
know?
idea that Leatherface drives around in a monster truck and throws roadkill at cars to make them break down. I laughed so hard when that happened. The couple in this movie, Michelle and annoying guy, are driving around and they encounter these people and blah blah blah. And Leatherface fucking takes out their car by throwing roadkill at it. It's the best. The best. Originally, Tom Savini and Peter Jackson were both considered to direct this movie.
I remember hearing that. Yeah, that would have been wild. Because this was right in the time that Peter Jackson was doing like Meet the Feebles and Brain Dead and all those other weird low budget movies.
It would have been amazing, I think.
Mm-hmm.
As it stands, the director of the movie was kind of hamstrung by studio interference, and
to the point that he wanted his name taken off of the movie.
Yeah, he said he had a bunch of ideas, and they were all they all got shot down. He said one of the things I wanted to do that was too expensive was having the climax in the rain and having Leatherface on horseback wielding the giant saw like a sword to play off the Excalibur vibe of the trailer. That would have been awesome. But it wasn't in the fucking movie, was it?
I don't know if that fits with Leatherface.
No, not at all.
A jousting knight?
No, it doesn't. Neither did the trailer, but my God, just go with it. Something. Give me something.
You know what? I would say that if the second movie is, if you need a couple of beers to enjoy this, I think maybe you need to have some of Gunnar Hansen's pop brownies to enjoy this one.
Right. One more observation that I had about this movie, and by the way, this movie stinks. I mean, I don't have a lot to say about it.
It does. I mean, even the people that, I mean, say what you will about the later movies, but you could tell that at least some of the actors were having the time of their life chewing as much scenery as they could with it. Nobody in this movie looked like they were having any fun at all.
No. Also, we find out that Leatherface likes them private parts. So that's a thing.
Yes, and he sees Santa and all he thinks of it is as food. I was going to say, as much as I do not like this movie, I fucking hate this movie. I'm still interested in eventually plunking down the money to get the Blu-ray copy of an unrated cut.
Okay.
Just because I want to see what the differences were, because this was a movie that suffered so badly from studio interference. I'd kind of like to see what they originally had in mind, or at least some semblance of it.
Yeah. That damn studio interference will fuck up a movie.
Get you every time.
Every time. No movie has ever really persevered after that. So I don't know why the studio isn't like, you know what? Learn from history. I was going to say, if you look at the design of Leatherface in this movie, I really wonder if Bruce Pritchard or Vince McMahon saw this on late night cable one night and was like, hey, that's a character. Because Leatherface has more than a passing resemblance to mankind in this movie. Maybe not so much the mask, but the rest of the outfit, the hair, the tie, the shirt. At one point, I saw Leatherface running. I'm like, holy shit, it's Mick Foley.
Now, I actually thought he looked more like mankind in
the second one,
Texas Chainsaw, the beginning.
Oh, the beginning. Okay.
But no, I could definitely see a connection between the two characters. I mean, it's not even subtle.
No. It just really struck me at one point, and I couldn't even tell you when it was, but Leatherface is running, looks just like Mick Foley. I'm like, well, fuck. Somebody saw this on late night cable.
Oh, I'm sure.
The thing was that this was the first movie that New Line distributed of Texas Chainsaw, and they wanted it to be their new franchise because they thought Nightmare on Elm Street was going away, which also means we were completely robbed of a Nightmare on Elm Street and Leatherface crossover. But Tomko, I'm here to tell you, not a Leatherface and Jason crossover. Did you know this?
No.
Oh, Tomko. Well, around this time, there was a whole line of Texas Chainsaw Massacre comics. So we go to the comics distributed by Topps. It was Jason versus Leatherface. Yes, this happened. And the cover for the first issue says the next Texas Chainsaw Massacre is on Friday the 13th. What a great idea, right? It's awful. It's not good. I read it. I read it.
Really?
Yeah. After a greedy company wants to expand and drain Crystal Lake for expansion, Jason escapes from Crystal Lake, goes on a nasty rampage, ends up on a train that manages to take him to Sawyerville, home of the best barbecue in Texas. And he manages to fatefully lumber into the path of a man running away from Leatherface and someone else who talks like Chop Top, but doesn't look like Chop Top, but calls himself the Hitchhiker, which makes no sense because the Hitchhiker is dead. Whatever. And of course, immediately Leatherface and Jason fight until Jason disarms them. Then they become friends and they bond because Jason sees Leatherface without a mask. And they're both ugly freaks and they're both misunderstood. Also, in this comic series, the last name given to the Leatherface family is the Slaughters. Yeah, that's right, the Slaughters. That's real subtle. Sergeant must be a real distant uncle.
I was just wondering that, yeah.
Even though it's been established their last name is Sawyer, we'll call them the Slaughters. Yeah. And it's revealed that the cook, Drayton Slaughter, I guess, promised his sister Verna, that'll come in later in the franchise, believe it or not, promised his sister that on her deathbed, he would look after her boys. So, according to the comics, the cook is Leatherface and Hitchhiker and Chop Top's uncle, despite the fact that he's supposed to be their brother in the first movie. So who cares, right? After Jason defends Leatherface from the Hitchhiker bullying him, they fight again, and Leatherface is told by the cook to defend them from his new friend, and they fight, and Hitchhiker hits Jason over the head with a hammer from behind, and that's it. Then they throw him in the lake. And then Jason reemerges from the lake. And he doesn't.
So what you're saying is a prestigious comic book publisher like Topps somehow managed to drop the ball on this.
That's what I'm telling you, yeah.
I am shocked.
Believe it or not, yeah. How did they even get this cleared? That's what I want to know. How did this even happen?
I think chances are all New Line saw were potential royalty checks, and they figured, it's just a comic book. It doesn't count.
I'm guessing you're probably right, quite honestly.
I mean, that happens to this day with the Army of Darkness books that come out from Dynamite. Some of them are really good. A lot of them aren't. But you know what? Raimi, Tapert, and Campbell, they're still getting paid, so they don't care.
Yeah, true. 1994 brought us what, Tomko?
O.J. Simpson.
Yeah. What else?
Texas Chainsaw, the new generation.
I guess I'll accept that answer.
This movie, you know what? As bad as it is, it's still better than Leatherface.
Oh yeah, it's really amazing. It's famous for having early starring roles.
Not one, but two Oscar-winning actors in it.
Early starring roles from Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey, who has the balls to say all right, all right, all right in this movie, believe it or not.
And you know what? I was talking about how nobody in that third movie looked like they were having fun. McConaughey looked like he was having the time of his life on this
He
movie.
chews the hell out of every piece of scenery there possibly is.
Yes.
It's amazing.
And as dumb as this movie is, he is fun to watch in this movie.
The thing that's hilarious to me is he basically plays the same exact character in theory as Viggo Mortensen from 3.
Essentially, yeah.
Except he plays him way more over the top.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter if nothing makes sense. It doesn't matter if the characters are as thin as a piece of notebook paper. It doesn't matter if Leatherface is walking around in a wig and an evening gown. McConaughey brings it in this movie. He really does.
Yeah. This movie kind of moves more into the territory of black comedy like the second one. But it
Oh, no. You're giving it way too much credit. This movie moves into the territory of stupid.
Oh, it does do that. I think it's trying to be a parody of Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies in general. And it's written by one of the co-creators of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Kim Henkel. So
it's directed by him as well, I think, isn't it?
So. So it's weird because the iconic Leatherface seems to lost his killing touch and throws temper tantrums pretty much the entire time. There is a dinner scene in this movie, and it lacks all the tension of the previous dinner with Leatherface segments of the movies. By the way, why hasn't anybody ever done a Texas Chainsaw family reunion movie? Because, my God, how big is this family?
I don't know. I choose to think that this is kind of like Halloween, where you have just different continuities depending on the movie that you're watching.
Well, I mean,
it's like I kind of get the impression that Halloween or Texas Chainsaw 3 is its own continuity. This is its own. Then you have the Michael Bay movies, and then it just kind of splinters off from there.
I choose to believe they're all one.
I wish I could.
Despite the fact that Leatherface gets a chainsaw in his gut and should be dead after the second one, I choose to believe.
Now, I mean, with this movie, everybody in it is annoying to one degree or another. Everybody is stupid to many degrees, and it's just the same movie again as the first one, except it's more gratuitous.
Well, the dinner scene is so ridiculous and over the top, and it's supposed to terrorize the girl that they have captured. That's the whole point of the dinner scene. And in this one, it doesn't work. It's so ridiculous because McConaughey is all over the place that the ancient grandfather, who's also in this movie, despite being blown away in the third one, he just gets up from the table and walks away. And when Leatherface tries to go after the defiant Jenny, played by Renee Zellweger, she just orders him to sit the fuck down, which he does without hesitation. And by the way, in this one, they don't eat people at all. They eat pizza. So,
I mean, I get what he was trying to go for, but I don't know. I just don't think that he has the chops to write a self-satire. And he sure as hell didn't have the budget.
No. I mean, on its surface, this is a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie where a group of kids on prom get lost and have car trouble and run across the whole Sawyer family, and murders happen, but that's not what this movie is. This is all over the place. For once, let's talk about Leatherface. For one, let's talk about Leatherface, I should say.
I mean, I get what they were trying to go for, but this has not aged well in 2021 terms. And B, it just, I don't know. It just gives me the feeling that they're kind of making fun of transgender people,
Kinda, yeah. In case you don't know, Leatherface is dressed up like a woman the whole time and is kind of a screaming, shrill parody of any normal woman the whole time.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I the only good thing I can say about this is McConaughey. He is just I could watch his performance all day long and be entertained, but the rest of the movie that is around that performance is just so bad. So
What do you
bad.
mean so bad? You mean the whole subplot where the Sawyer family is being enlisted by an Illuminati type group to inspire horror in people around the country?
Yes, and the head of that Illuminati group opens his shirt to reveal scarification and just nipple rings galore. That's stupid.
It's really dumb. Really dumb. Kim Hinkle says that Vilmer, who was played by Matthew McConaughey, was kind of a reincarnation of the hitchhiker.
Really?
Yep. I mean, there are references to him being ran over, so I guess that's whatever.
It tells me Kim Hinkle's talking out of his ass on that one.
Maybe so. Maybe so.
And didn't they get sued by both Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger's agents?
They did not. Yeah, they
Because,
didn't want this released at all.
well, not only did they release it, but they put them front and center on the movie posters, the video box art, everything. So you had no way of being mistaken who's in this movie.
Yeah, you used to see this in $5 bins at Walmart all the time.
For good reason.
Yeah, with McConaughey's crazed face and Zellweger's horrified face prominently on the cover, both their names there, and in between was a sexy version of Leatherface that's not in the movie whatsoever. If you look at that cover, that's not the same character that's in this movie. So I don't know. They just didn't know how to market it, and maybe with good reason, because it's a fascinating mess, is what I'll call it. It's really
It's a fucking train wreck.
yeah, and I can't look away. I cannot. Yeah.
I can look away. I can't look away, but I'm not going to look back on it, I don't think. I mean, there's a reason why I've only seen this movie in bits and pieces. It's because until I've had a reason to, I couldn't make my way all the way to the end.
Oh, I've seen it like 3 or 4 times. I'm fascinated by it. I am.
You've got some kind of, sadistic watching habit, sir.
Yeah. Other people look back on it too, including Renee Zellweger. Yahoo Movies had the balls to ask her about it in 2016. And she actually responded. She said it was the best workout ever, that movie. Yeah, a live chainsaw. That's a motivation to get running. Run fast. It was very low budget, so we all shared a tiny Winnebago that the producer of the film, it belonged to him. It was his personal camper. Makeup was in the front seats, and there was a table in the middle for hair. There was a little tiny curtain by the bathroom. That was where you put your prom dress and your flower on. And she said, and friends for life. McConaughey, Robert Jacks, who played Leatherface. He's passed now, but he's one of my favorites. It was ridiculous how we pulled that off. I have no idea. I'm sure none of it was legal. Anything we did was a little bit dangerous, but what an experience. It was kamikaze filmmaking. So at least she's somewhat a little positive on it.
I was going to say, it's kind of cool that she has some good memories of it.
Yeah. Yeah. McConaughey, I saw in a couple clips and sound bites, he enjoyed doing this character. So that's a thing. They're not prominent. You have to look for them, but he apparently liked playing this character.
Well, like I said, he looked like he was having just the time of his life playing that character.
Yeah. Little factoid, Robert Jacks, who played Leatherface in this movie, was a friend of Blondie's Debbie Harry, and they had a song called einziger Weg, which is German for the only way, which is single written for and featured in the film. So Leatherface with Debbie Harry was a single.
I was
on
going
the
to say,
soundtrack.
in all fairness, the soundtrack for this movie isn't bad.
No, it's pretty good. Other things real quick. John Squires, who is a horror journalist, theorized that the Joss Whedon film Cabin in the Woods owes a lot to this movie, based on the Illuminati subplot of "We're here to inspire horror," which is kind of fun.
That's kind of a stretch.
No, I like it.
No pun intended.
I like the idea of like them just taking Leatherface and dropping him off at like random families. That's why his family's so extended. They're just trying to inspire horror, you see.
All right, that's a retcon I can get behind.
Yeah. Kim Hinkle wasn't done, by the way. Well, he was done with the franchise, but not the Illuminati subplot. He went and made a movie called Butcher Boys in 2013, 2012, somewhere around there. With a family of cannibals, with one of the characters wielding a chainsaw and wearing other people's faces. And they're all controlled by the Illuminati, believe it or not. But it's completely unrelated.
He just won't let go of that bone, will
No,
he?
he won't. He won't. They won't let me do it in this franchise? Well, fuck them. I'll make my own same franchise and nobody will know the difference. God damn it. There's also the final scene, which features the return of Marilyn Burns as Sally Hardesty. She's the old woman in the hospital. As Jenny's shell-shocked, this woman is wheeled past her, and they share a knowing glance, which is kind of cool.
Well, personally, it's not as cool as Matthew McConaughey getting run over by a airplane in mid-flight.
That does happen, yes. Yeah.
Out of nowhere. I mean, I'm sorry. Was that connected to the movie at all?
I think the Illuminati hired that airplane to hit him. They hired an entire fucking airplane to hit him, man. Yeah. See,
because why be simple and use a gun when you can get a propeller plane?
Yeah, and the main protagonist of the movie, Jenny, Renee Zellweger, just gets in a limo with the man in black in charge of the Illuminati, and they drive away. That's the end of the movie. And cross-dressing Leatherface.
Yeah, and she was really casual about that, too.
Yeah, she's like, okay. And cross-dressing Leatherface does his chainsaw dance all over the place. Which, by the way...
To the nth degree.
Which, by the way, I forgot to mention, that's the end of Texas Chainsaw 2. Stretch kills Chop Top and does the crazy chainsaw dance.
It was a tradition for a while.
Yeah, and that was... I was a younger man, and I was flipping through channels, and that was on some cable station one day, because I remember seeing the very end and seeing her crazed look and doing that dance, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? So, yeah.
Which is the only appropriate reaction you would have if you just kind of stumble onto that scene.
Exactly. All right, we've covered a bunch of the old school Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, but we still have quite a few to come. The Platinum Dunes era, or Platinum Dumbs, am I right? So, in order to give them their proper due, since this episode's already running long, we're going to split this up into two. We'll see you next time for part 2 of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise.